Vine Church Poole. You've tuned in to our third part of our series, Church Around a Table. If you've missed the other two, please do go on our YouTube, Facebook or website, and you'll be able to access and watch back at your own time those videos. But before I get started this morning, church, I just really want to just say a massive thank you. I just want to give a big shout out to Andrew Phillips. If you're part of the Vine Church, you know Andrew's very recently moved to London to take up a new role in central London, but he co-wrote a book called Thought for Eating, and some of my material has come from that book, but also come from conversations I've had with Andrew this week. And I just want to say a massive thank you to Andrew and all your resources and knowledge that has helped me put this together. If you haven't read his book, I just want to encourage you, go out and buy it. I think it's on Amazon or it's somewhere online, and you can just go and purchase it and read it. Great book, especially if you want to know more about this stuff this morning. So this morning we are carrying our third part of our series, and we're looking at justice and injustice in the context of food. See, church, you would agree with me that we live in such a beautiful world. From the Amazon rainforests to the Purbeck Hills. From the big blue whales to the tiny little bees. And then we start to think about us, humanity, the way we are formed and made. It's just unbelievable. See, I believe that God created an amazing world for all his creation to enjoy. And our world, our planet, is an expression of God's creativity, of God's beauty and God's love. However, something has gone wrong. Over time, the way we live and nurture our planet has affected our world negatively. So why should we as Christians, as followers of Jesus, why should we care for our world and the environment we call home? See, I think the Bible gives us really three main reasons why we should care for the environment around us. The first one is that God says his creation is very good. The material world matters to God. He sustains it, all in the right time, in the right way. Without him, it would all fall apart into chaos. Colossians chapter 1 verse 16 to 17 says this: He is before all things. In him all things hold together. So if we neglect, abuse or spoil the environment, we are damaging something that is very precious to God. The second reason why we should care for our environment is in Genesis chapter 1:28, but also 2:15. And this is it. God commanded humankind to do so. He says that we should take care of the living and the non-living creation. We are to work at ruling and ordering creation as good stewards. God calls his people to look after his creation. It's a mandate from heaven. See, I think in Christian circles, we've underestimated this mandate from God. We've forgotten about our responsibility to creation and to one another. And this is part of our worship to God. The third reason, and the final reason, is that one day this cosmos will be renewed and recreated as the new heavens and the new earth. It will be a place where we are truly at home, where God will dwell with his people, and where all creation will come together and worship God. So how we treat this environment now ought to be a preview, like a practice run, if you would like, of what we do in the new creation. Eating is never a solitary act. Each meal connects us to a food chain, precious resources, human labour, and a global ecology. See, let's think about this for a moment. See, when you are at home or in a restaurant, you sit down for meal time. You probably did this last night. And you come to eat your meal and you look at your plate and you see the food on that plate. You see the meat. I love meat, if I'm honest, church. I absolutely love meat. I love a good steak. The vegetables, maybe some of us don't have as many vegetables on the plate, do we, Dick? But the bread, the fruit, the spices and so on, you see all the different parts of your meal being made up. And then as we look at the food, we start to think about, where did this food actually come from? Which supermarket? Which farm? Which land? Which factory? And actually one step before that, we as Christians, followers of Jesus, we believe ultimately food is a provision from God. But there is a process, a system, a chain that has gone on here. Let me take meat, for example, chicken. See, we in our family, we often, more times than often, we shop at Lidl. And we buy quite a bit of chicken, if we're honest. And on the chicken, it says it's from Birchwood Farm. Well, there's a label saying Birchwood Farm. But where is that? Does that farm even exist? How are they treating those animals? Are there 20,000 birds in a shed? Are the workers getting fair wage and treated fairly? These are just some of the questions you can ask yourself, even just looking at some chicken from Lidl. Last year, we watched a documentary on the BBC with Simon Reeves. And it was a documentary where he travelled across the Mediterranean. And he went to a place in Spain known as Europe Market Garden. And unless you shop locally, the chances are that you have got some fruit and vegetables from there. See, in Spain, this Europe Market Garden supplies a lot of our major supermarkets here in England. But some of those people who are working in these farms, they live in homes that we wouldn't want to live in. And to be honest, we wouldn't even want to step in. There is a massive question mark if these forgotten people are treated fairly, the wages that are given, and then the fruit and the veg comes to our supermarkets and we find it so easily to buy it and eat it and consume it. See, there is a process, there's a chain that's gone on. It's gone from land to farm to factory to supermarket to the plate to my mouth. See, when we think about justice and injustice in the context of food, church, I think there's 3 areas we want to focus on this morning. And they are people, environment, and food waste. So let's just start off thinking about people. As with other markets like clothing, food supply chains are often rely on exploiting people and sometimes ultimately slavery. Even when they don't, nevertheless, people are often not paid enough to live on. See, initiatives like Fair Trade attempt to address this. Also, there is an unjust division of food in our world. And because of this, this has led globally to 821 million people who are undernourished. People who don't have enough food. See, this is an enormous number. Something to think about when most of the UK throw away food so easily. See, while we are in the UK right now, food is unjustly divided. The use of food banks has continued to increase since 2010, and even more so in the pandemic. Trussell Trust, which many of us would have heard of in our home, delivered 1.9 million. That's right, church. 1.9 million emergency food parcels in the UK last year. In April to June 2020 this year, food banks went up by 81%. That's the use of food banks went up by 81% because of COVID-19. And of course, as we've said, COVID-19 has made this worse. But shockingly, one of the richest countries which we live in, one of the richest countries in the world, so many people still live in poverty that they cannot afford to buy food for themselves or their family. They cannot afford to put food on the table. Many of you would have heard the recent news where footballer Marcus Rashford from Manchester United, he campaigned for 1 million school children who already receive school meals in the school time. He campaigned that it would get extended to the holidays. And he said this: no child should have to worry where their next meal is coming from. You know, it's a sad thought to think that potentially 1 million children in our country are worrying about if they're going to get food and when is their next food is coming from. 8.4 million people in the UK are struggling to afford to eat. 8.4 million people in the UK are struggling to eat when we are a country of about 66 million people. And then there's the issue of food and human health. So much food today is produced by large companies who are primarily interested in profit. They aren't particularly interested in whether the food and the drink that they sell are actually good for people. As we all know, poor health from diet is a huge problem in the UK. See, there's a real injustice in that healthy food, more times than often, is more expensive than unhealthy food. Healthy food such as fruit and veg is more expensive than unhealthy food such as sugary and processed foods. B. Wilson puts it this way in her book, The Way We Eat Now. Humans used to hunt for their food, but now food hunts for us in the form of adverts on buses and on TV and on Facebook and special offers in the supermarket. See, now globally 650 million people are classified as obese. Let's just take this to the UK for a moment. 28.7% of adults in the UK are classified as obese. That's nearly 1/3 of adults in the UK are classified as obese. Children living in deprived areas are more likely to be obese. As I said before, this is a real injustice, is that actually healthy food is often way more expensive than unhealthy food. See, when we think about food we eat, it affects people. It affects real people like me and you. It affects people who were made in the image of God. When we think about food and people, we think about our people paid a fair amount of money, enough money to live on. We think about that the food globally and in our country, do people have enough food to survive and to live? And we think about the cost of food, that actually healthy eating is often more expensive. See, this affects people. And God created food for us all to enjoy and celebrate, but not at the expense of others. The second one is the environment. See, the food we consume has caused a massive biodiversity loss. When I mean biodiversity, I mean killing of animals. And there's two major reasons for this. The first one is that the food is the key driver behind the loss of habitat, the loss of land as such, where the animals live. And therefore, because the animals have lost their land, we lose wildlife. The second one is the intensive agriculture use of chemicals which pollute the land and kill the animals. See, in recent years, this has got increasingly bad, church. According to one study by Living Planet Report 2020, animal population has fallen 68% since 1970. See, these animals, these are God's creation. And a lot of these animals we love to see. How many of us love to see the different animals in our garden, the different kinds of insects and bugs? How many of us love to go to different countries and see the vast amount of different animals? And we are amazed at God's creation. However, because of the way we consume food, we are seeing that a lot of these animals are dying and a lot of these species are becoming extinct. Food production is the single biggest cause of deforestation today. The cutting down of trees in the Amazon to make way for beef production. The food we eat affects the environment around us, not just for our generation, but for generations to come. The third one, and lastly, is food waste. As I said before, many people in the world don't have enough food to eat. In the UK, we throw away 40% of our food. That's right, 40%. See, food waste is shockingly misuse of resources, and it really shows a lack of respect to people, to animal, and to God's world. Globally, if we were to use farmland the size of China, Mongolia and Kazakhstan combined to grow food that is never actually eaten. Crazy. You getting that? The land of China, Mongolia and Kazakhstan, that is how much we grow food, that much space, of all that food grown in that much space, and then we never eat it. If food waste was a country, it would be the third largest emitter of greenhouse gases behind the US and China. See, the amount of food we waste is unjust to people, animals and the environment. 8.4 million people in the UK are struggling to afford to eat, and at the same time we and supermarkets throw away food way too much. So let me take you back to those 3 reasons why looking after our environment and looking after our world is so important. Number 1 was that God says His creation is very good. So if we neglect, abuse or spoil His environment, we are damaging something very precious to God. Number 2 was that God commanded humankind to do so. It's our responsibility to take care of creation, and we take care of one another, and it's part of our worship to God. Number 3 is how we treat the environment now ought to be a preview, a practice run if you would like, before we have the new creation. See, what we eat and how it is sourced is important to looking after our environment, and consequently it honours God, and we care for humans, people like us, people that are made in the image of God. And I've got 3 things to challenge us going forwards, because it's so easy to hear all these stats and information, and if you're like me, you're taken back by it and you feel, whoa, this is a lot, and how can I make a difference? Well, why don't you try one of these? Why not take your favourite food and explore, where does that come from? Who was part of it? How were they treated? It could be coffee, it could be meat. Another thing you could do, you could look at, how can I help to stop the wasting of food? And that could be globally or in the UK. How can I help stop wasting food? The third one, how can I help those in our country or those even around the world that cannot put food on the table for themselves and their family? What can I do to support others being able to provide food for their families and themselves? Food and justice is a vital part of being a disciple of Jesus in our lives. Don't give up in apathy. Don't feel overwhelmed in fear, but respond in love for God, His creation, and His people. See, I believe that we can make a difference, and we can all play a part. But there's another side to it as well. We can use our influence to encourage businesses and the government and local authority to play their part as well. And I believe, as followers of Jesus, that we are called to take care of this land. We are called to take care of God's creation. And as we do that, we are showing that actually we care for all God's created, all animals, but also people who are made in the image of God. As I said, if you want to know more about this, I encourage you to check out Andrew Phillips and the book that he co-wrote with two other people, Fought for Eating. And I hope that you can be encouraged and challenged to think about, where did my food come from? Who did it affect? How are they treated? Because these are people.